give a shout out to the Game Time podcast that added 2 more followers. That's Rachel and Jamel, the front desk of the Holiday Inn Express here in Rocky Point, Tampa, Florida. They've been great to me in Tornado. We couldn't have asked for a better host. Lots of smiles. I got my internet up. I've got a bay view out my window. I can see all the boogie boards and all the dolphins coming in. Shout out to Rachel and Jamel. Big thanks for you both today and getting us set up and everything, and an early check-in. So definitely appreciate that. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Welcome to the Game Time podcast. We are back again with another interview. It's been a while since we had an interview, but we've got Pacers media member Alex Gordon on the podcast today. Alex, thank you for coming on the Game Time podcast. I appreciate you. I appreciate having you on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun to do this with you guys and talk about the Pacers.
Yes, it's been a great season for the Pacers. We are going to get into that today for sure. But first, if you can, for our audience, kind of talk about what you do for the Pacers and then your podcast as well.
Yeah, so no, I've been doing a podcast for about 7 years now called Setting the Pace, and we've had a lot of fun doing that. The last couple of years I've been a credentialed media member, so I've been able to go to all of the home games and then all of the playoff games as well, so that's been a lot of fun. And then just covering the team for that, I used to have a Substack I did last year called the Blue and Golden .substack.com, but I have not really done that in the last year, so might pick it up again for next season, but right now just focus on the podcast. And we are a daily podcast as well, so you're looking at Monday through Friday. If you're looking for Pacers content, we got that for you.
Gotcha. If you can, for us, kind of talk about your journey, not only being a fan of the Pacers when you were little, and then just kind of your journey through media. I've got one more year at IU East, and I've been broadcasting since I was in high school at radio at Warren Central. So just kind of talk about your background and how you got to this point in your career.
Yeah, so I always tell people whenever they ask me about this, it's better to be lucky than good. And sometimes you just got to get the right breaks. And if you go back and look at just where I started from, I was just a fan like everybody else, listening to the radio, that kind of thing. And I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to do that. And then podcasts started becoming really a big thing. And I figured out how to do my own podcast. I was terrible at it, but was given several opportunities from different people to like try it out and do some different things. Eventually got myself on the Dan Dockett show as a guest. And whenever I was on Dan Dockett's show on the radio as a guest, it's like things slowly started to like happen. And so then more people started having me on as a guest to talk about the Pacers. The podcast was not that big, but it was like slowly getting bigger. And then you start making, connections with people that cover the team, whether it's podcasters or whether it's like Jeremiah Johnson, Chris Denary, guys that are working for the actual team for the TV broadcast, things like that. Started making connections with them as just being like a fan and like whatever. So long story short, I just kept doing it consistently and trying to just do what I could to do, to build myself up.
Mm-hmm.
I will say one thing that really did help me was Kent Sterling. I'm sure a lot of people know about Kent Sterling. He used to be in charge of the radio program. I think he hired Dockage. He was there when they had Kravitz and Eddie and that stuff, and Michael Grady was on the show then, but he was kind of like the program director then.
Okay.
He came on our podcast once a week with me, and we did a show, and he kind of just helped me learn how to do some basic radio podcasting things throughout the during COVID and that kind of stuff. So that was really big for me. And then slowly the Pacers reached out after seeing the consistency. We had Kevin Pritchard on the podcast. Chad Buchanan's been on several times. And so you make those connections with the front office because they see people are listening to your show. Your Twitter following gets big. I just say consistency is key for anybody that wants to do this. If you don't put in the work, you're not just going to show up one day and, get a bunch of podcast listeners. You have to put in the work. You have to build your way up, starting out with 10 followers and 10 listeners to, over 2,000, 3,000 for the playoffs. So, it just takes time. It's not like it's just going to happen overnight, but consistency is key and persistence. You just got to be persistent about everything you're doing and make sure you know what you're talking about. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of my backstory, but the last 2 years I've been doing media coverage and the Pacers reached out and said they wanted to, have me have credentials so I could be around the team a little bit more, get to know me better because, whatever I'm saying, obviously people are listening to. So at least they have an idea of like who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and being able to be around the team. It does give you some kind of insight of like how things actually go versus what you might think on the outside.
Gotcha. And I appreciate the advice, especially with how with us starting up and everything the last couple of weeks and months. I
Mm.
definitely do appreciate it. I'm gonna give it over to my co-host Daryl. He's got some questions for you as we get deeper into this interview. Daryl, go ahead.
Thanks, Isaiah. So Alex, so I was doing my research on you and seeing your history. To your point, you just spoke about it. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, being a fan, what's your best memory as a fan prior to podcasting, as a fan, Pacer regular season, Pacer postseason?
Good question. So I was born in 1992, so still pretty young, but I was about 6 years old, obviously, when they took on the Chicago Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals. I really don't remember that, to be honest with you. My dad had those on VHS, and so I went back and watched them in the summers back in the day on tape. I would say my first real memory is probably the run to the finals in 2000 when I was 8 years old. I had the Beat LA shirt that they gave out to everybody, and I loved that team right there. Obviously, Reggie was huge, and then as I slowly started watching it more and more, I would definitely say the Paul George, Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson era was more like my senior year of high school, that type of time, college years. So that's when I really, really enjoyed him. And I was like, Paul George, incredible player. I loved the way that Lance played. I thought he was so much fun. David West was the veteran that always carried the team. You get frustrated because you knew George Hill was going to go 1 and 2 every time at the free throw line when the game was in the balance, just fighting for that. But other than that, like that's my biggest moment as like a fan is just kind of like seeing those teams make those runs and just watching them kind of evolve over time. It was really cool to kind of see. I think especially when Frank Vogel took over, that was when I was really into it. I remember having all my friends over and watching that first series against the Chicago Bulls, going to that playoff series with my mom and watching Jeff Foster foul the crap out of Derrick Rose. I mean, it's all just coming back to me now. But that was like when I really got into it.
Nice. So you spoke about the Vogel years and those playoff runs that they had, the 10, 11, 12 in that area, that time frame. So I've got a note here, and it kind of piggybacks on the Jay Huff edition, right? So I am still a big Miles fan, but and I didn't want him to go. However, part of the reason why is I remember when the Pacers traded Danny Granger for Evan Turner. 2014, I was excited. I was glad we had a two-way guy who didn't get hurt. And my concern, this year was that because the chemistry never was the same when Evan Turner became a Pacer. It seemed like things weren't right. Give me your best memory of when you thought something was going to go great and it didn't.
That's tough to do on the spot. I'm trying to think.
I had to do my research, man.
No, it's good. I mean, maybe the Monte Ellis signing back in
Oh,
Really?
2016.
that's a good
I
one.
thought, I thought, oh, this is a score. It's going to be a perfect fit next to Paul George, and that was pretty underwhelming to be honest with you. I also did not love when they traded Roy Hibbert to the Lakers when they had just drafted Miles. I thought that could have been a good kind of transition, like passing the baton type thing, like let him kind of play underneath him. But obviously, the game was changing so much at that point too. The Warriors spread out kind of offense was kind of becoming a thing.
Yeah.
It got Miles right in there at the power forward. Yamahimi ended up playing a lot there at the five, but. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember where I thought I agree with you that Danny Granger one is the one that really probably sticks out the most because Granger couldn't stay healthy, but when he was such a key part of that team's foundation, and when they let him go for Evan Turner, like it made sense. Even like you can talk about bringing in Andrew Bynum,
Yeah.
that was another one where they brought in Bynum thinking we need some center depth. He's obviously a better player than Yamahimi, but he couldn't stay healthy. And then he's getting haircuts in the middle of, halftime. So that was causing a lot of issues. He played 2 games, but like in the 2 games that he played, I mean, he had like 13 points and 6 rebounds in one game. And it was like, 10 minutes of play. Like that guy was just nasty at what he did and rebounding and being a force down low. But yeah, when you're talking about team chemistry, it definitely does matter. And I think people, underrate how important it actually is. So I would definitely agree though. When they lost Granger, that was probably the most devastating thing that happened to that team. I think they could have managed when Lance left for Charlotte, right? And they brought in Rodney Stuckey and CJ Miles. I think if Paul George never gets hurt, maybe that team still has one more run in them. But with Paul breaking his leg and then everything just kind of going to crap after that, it was tough. But the Danny Granger one, like Evan Turner was such a bad fit.
Yeah.
And when you trade for a guy that's on a tanking team, I mean, he was ready for Cancun. He wasn't ready for the playoffs. And so his mindset just was like going from like, I'm going to be on vacation in 2 months to, oh crap, I'm going to be playing for another 2 extra months than I thought I was going to be playing. And so I think that did make a difference and clearly just wasn't a good fit.
No, good. No, good answer. I like that for sure. Ramon, I'm gonna pass it over to you. I know you got a couple. For Alex, we'll let you hit a couple of them as well.
Why do you think I have a couple, man? I got one. All right, Alex, man, I want to apologize for my two co-hosts, man. Man, those guys, I thank you for coming. You're doing God's work dealing with us three. I just want to let you know that. So I appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right. I got one quick question, man, and it's probably not quick, and it's probably not no real answer to it. But how and when will the Pacers get to the mountaintop?
I think they were right there, guys. I really do. I think if Tyrese Halliburton does not get hurt in Game 7, I think they win the championship. And I'm not just saying that. And I know it sounds like hyperbole, but like I really do believe that. And obviously they should have won Game 4. They would have been up 3-1 against the Thunder. They were right there. And it's hard for me to sit here and say, oh, they can get right back to that point again because it is incredibly hard. And if you look at the landscape of the NBA, I think that the Western Conference has just gotten even better. I think the Rockets have done a terrific job with the team they've put together. They're obviously OKC's not going anywhere, and I think Denver did an awesome job as well, kind of building out their depth and their bench. And then the Pacers right now, I mean, you lose Miles Turner for nothing. I mean, you literally lost him for nothing. And now you have to try to find another center. And it's not like you're going to find someone that has that same skill set. I understand, Jay Huff is someone they just traded for. And like, yeah, Jay Huff has some of the same skill set, but he's not a top 10, 12 center like Miles Turner was. And it's going to be really hard to replace. And then you talk about Halliburton going with this Achilles injury. It's going to take a couple years, I think, for them to even just kind of sniff it again.
Sure.
The Eastern Conference, the good thing about that is it's pretty weak right now, and we'll see what happens, in the following season when Halliburton comes back from that Achilles injury. But I think with Siakam, I think he's still going to be in his prime when Halliburton comes back from injury. Hopefully you'll have growth from your young players in this upcoming year that'll help get them more prepared for the playoffs. But, I mean, it would not shock me if in 2 years we're talking about the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals again. It would not shock me if we're there, but I do think it's going to be hard to get, like you said, to the mountaintop. So it took them 25 years to get to the finals again after just making it with Reggie's squad back in 2000. So I hope it's not another 25 years because, I don't want to be that old when they get back to the NBA Finals again. But they're going to have to find ways to build this roster correctly. And I think they've done a good job of doing that. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to win in this league. And that's why Halliburton was playing, knowing he could do what he did, because it's not very often you're there. So I feel like this season definitely felt like it was their year to win the whole entire thing. All the crazy comebacks they had, it just ended on such a sour note. And I think that is what's the most devastating because to me, like people that were like just covering the league as like, they're non-biased, right? They're not Pacers or Thunder fan or whatever. They were saying like, I'm going to remember the Pacers as the team of this playoff run, not the Thunder that won the whole thing. So it's just a bummer the way that it all played out. But let's say 5 years, could I see them making it back to the NBA Finals? Yeah, I could. I think Halliburton's that good, and I think the front office is that good enough to get the right players in here to build the right team.
I think, well, my first question, I was debating on where I wanted to go to, but I do want to go back to Game 7, right? I think, what was your reaction when Tyrese went down, that initial reaction? Because I remember I didn't realize what had happened yet until they panned the camera. And we talked about it after Game 7, and I think I wasn't mad they lost at that point. I think for me, it was just his reaction to the injury. It was like, no, I know it popped, everything else. What was your initial reaction to it? It just kind of felt like, I don't know. It was a hard watch for sure. So what was your overall reaction when you saw that it was the Achilles? And did you know it was the Achilles right after?
As soon as he fell down, I knew what happened because we knew that it was a risk.
Yeah.
And I when I watched him hit those first 3 threes and he was talking trash when the Thunder called their first timeout, I said, oh man, Halliburton came to play tonight.
Yeah.
Like, this is vintage Tyrese Halliburton. This is going back to Game 7 in the Garden Halliburton. Like this is when you see him really looking to go carry the team. And I mean, he was hitting threes from deep. It wasn't like he was just pulling up and shooting wide open threes. Like, no, they were from way out there, and he was looking for a shot. And when we see Halliburton play like that, usually the Pacers win those games. I mean, I think the record was like 29-2 or 31-2, something like that when he was around that. So it's like, okay, like why would I think the Thunder could win this game, especially when Jalen Williams was playing so terrible at the beginning of this game? It was SGA, and that was about it. Like they were really struggling. Caruso comes into the game and kind of like hit a couple threes, got them settled down a little bit, but the Pacers were in control of that game. As soon as he stepped back and fell to the ground, I said, oh no, he's done. He's done. And I was at the live watch party in Gainbridge Fieldhouse with all the fans. I mean, you won't believe how loud it was in that arena when people were like excited for every shot the Pacers were making. As soon as he went down, you could hear a pin drop in there. And I mean, the only reason that you couldn't is because they had background music playing in between the timeout. And like Chris Fineri, Jeremiah Johnson are kind of like emceeing throughout the quarters and timeout breaks. They didn't even know what to say. Like it was just like nobody knew what to say. And it was so devastating because I think everybody knew like you just lost your best player for the next season. And so not only did you lose game 7, more than likely, you just lost your best player for the next season. And now it's like, what is going to happen with this team? And I think everybody just kind of saw it all crumbling down so fast. But for me, the fact they were up at half, it kind of gave you some hope. Like my whole thing was like, maybe they go into the locker room at halftime, they see Tyrese, injured and whatever. And it kind of gives them like, let's win this for Tyrese type thing. It did the complete opposite. They came out so flat in the third quarter. They were terrible. And it looked like they were deflated. Obi Toppin, I mean, the guy was holding back tears every single question he was asking after the game because he just couldn't believe that it had happened to Tyrese. And like he was the Pacers' second best big throughout the finals run. And he was a no-show in that game. And so you didn't have anything from Miles Turner. You had nothing from Obi Toppin. It was like Ben Mathurin, TJ McConnell trying to carry the load in the second half. And it's like, they were making it close a little bit, but it wasn't like you ever felt like they were going to get over that hump. But when TJ cut it to 4 in the third, you're kind of thinking, could something happen? Then OKC goes on a 5-0 run. Now it's back up to 9. You're just like, it doesn't feel like they're going to be able to overcome this OKC lead that they built. And I said this on our podcast, when Lou Dort hit that 3 as the shot clock was expiring at the beginning of the third quarter, I was like, all right, this game's over. Like, if they're hitting that stupid stuff right there, Tyrese goes down like this, it's not your year. And it's like, you hate to say it like that, but OKC had the best team all season long. So for them to be the champions, you don't feel bad about it. But I think when you look back and watch how the Pacers were playing this year, like they definitely felt like the team that should have won the championship. And that game was right there for them to win. So yeah, I mean, obviously the injury devastating. My first thought was just like, I'm sick to my stomach. I don't even know what to say. Like you're speechless. You really don't know what to say. You're kind of at a loss for words. I walked out into the lobby just to kind of see what people were doing. People were on the phone calling, people talking about it. People were crying in the stands. I mean, that is how legit it was. And I even had friends that told me they cried 2 or 3 days after just because they were so devastated about what had happened to Tyrese. Like you just feel so bad for the guy. Then the fact that how often are you ever going to be in a game 7 of an NBA finals? Like there's got to be a loser at some point, but you don't want to lose that way. You don't want to lose because you lost your best player to an injury. And so, it's still kind of hard to just like go through. It's like you go from that to 2 weeks later. Now you don't have Miles Turner on the roster either. And you got Jay Huff as your starting center and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen for the future of this team. But life comes at you fast and you just got to be ready to take the punches when they come. But man, it was devastating blow is all I can really say. It's just a loss for words, man.
I had to work at 8 a.m. the day after, and I probably stayed up just sitting there. I'm like, man, it was just because for me, it was like I was born in 2004, right? So I'd never seen this team in the finals. So for me, it was like this is the closest they've ever been. So for me, when I saw Tyrese go down and then the game was over, I didn't even care that they lost at that point. I was just like, man, it was the reaction that he had once he knew what it was. I was like, oh my goodness. And it just kind of reminded me of KD when KD got hurt. It was like, not now at that time, I think a lot of people were maybe rooting for Toronto, but at the end of the day, it was still devastating for KD fans and Achilles in general. But it was definitely a long night for sure. My second question is about this coming season. I think I've said it on the podcast. I think Nemhard or Mathurin have the potential to get an all-star place in the Eastern Conference next year. But I think my question is, which one do you see having the better year, or could you see them both playing very well next season? I think a lot of people want to see Mathurin take that jump. I kind of compare it to Ant. It took Ant a couple of years to find his footing, longer than a lot of people expected. Where Nemhard, he found his footing very quick, and it happens for some people. Do you see them both making a really big leap next year? along with Siakam. How do you see that playing out with those two?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, somebody was asking me about that the other day, and I said they're going to be right up there in the conversation for most improved player of the year, with both Nemhard and Mathurin, based on how they play. I will say this with Mathurin, I think there's more potential there for him to be a star,
Yeah,
but I also do realize that Rick Carlisle probably has a shorter leash on him, and with the Pacers needing a point guard, we saw what Nembhard did against the Celtics 2 years ago when he was like the primary guy. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that at that level for an 82 game season, but like he's definitely got that in him. He's very, very good. I think he's going to
yeah,
probably take a step back defensively because they're going to be asking so much of him offensively this year. And with TJ McConnell being 33 years old, like you're not going to rely on him to like carry a heavy load throughout the regular season either. Like he's probably going to stay in that same, 15 to 20 minutes per game kind of a load, and you'll probably see Nemhard run the rest. But I think this is honestly like what's so important to me is what style of play they go with, because with Halliburton they play super fast. They want to get the ball up and down the court, move the ball, left to right, north and south, just try to figure out how they can get all these openings and things like that. But without Halliburton, I don't think they can play the same way. And so
yeah,
now you're going to have to change the style of play you play with. And obviously, like they still probably want to do a lot of the same stuff with the floor spacing and things like that. Siakam's still going to be your number one player, but Mathurin is a guy that is better at isolation basketball, a guy that can get to the basket, create his own, shot, get fouled, get to the free throw line. Like he can do all that. But with Halliburton, like there's obviously been like a clash of styles between the two of them.
yeah.
And that's why it's not been the perfect fit. And that's why a lot of people have suggested, well, obviously you're not getting rid of Halliburton, so maybe Mathurin is the guy that you do trade. But now that Turner left, it feels like there's like a huge opening here for Mathurin to kind of just ascend into, could this be our starting two? Could this be our starting three? Could he take Aaron Nesmith's spot when Halliburton comes back? Because that to me is probably the competition you're looking at. I don't think he's ever going to replace Nemhard at the two spot just because of what Nemhard does defensively and being the secondary ball handler out there next to Tyrese. So I think that my answer would say, like, for All Star, I don't know if I see All Star for either of them unless they somehow get into like a top four, top five seed. I still think Siakam is probably more of the All Star level player. But if you're looking at most improved, I mean, I could see Nemhard averaging close to 9, 10 assists a game and maybe 17, 18 points. And if that's good enough to get him in that conversation of most improved, like that wouldn't shock me. He's gonna have to shoot the basketball better. I think last year, out of all the starting shooting guards in the NBA, he was tied for the worst 3-point percentage at 29% from three. I think him and Kelly Oubre Jr. were tied for dead last in that category. So he's gonna have to be better at that.
Yeah.
But we saw him and shoot the ball incredibly well in the playoffs, and he does kind of take his game up to another level when he needs to. So my gut feeling says Nemhard has the better season of the two, but I
Okay.
can definitely see where Mathurin has a great season. It also wouldn't surprise me either, and this might be a hot take, if Mathurin plays incredibly well, to see what they can get for him at the deadline and
Yeah.
see if that could be a huge trade chip to maybe go out there and address more of a position of need, whether you feel like you need to get a better five or you feel like there's a better three position out there, because I don't know if Aaron Nesmith is a long-term answer at the starting three, even though I love the way he plays. Kind of wonder if you need more scoring from that position. I know Trey Murphy the third from New Orleans is a name that people have thrown around, but if you could trade Mathurin and figure out salary to match to get you like a legit three when Halliburton comes back, that could be the way to go. But also, if Mathurin's playing really well, you also don't want to give up on a guy that you drafted. So
Yeah.
I understand both sides of it, but I think that to me is something just to watch. But yeah, I would say I think Nemhard probably has a better chance of getting more recognition.
Daryl, I wanna get you in on it, and obviously Ramon, you as well, because Daryl, we've talked about Mathurin, we've talked about Nemhard. I've defended Mathurin. I feel like where I've said, there's so many scores on this Pacers team where sometimes one person doesn't play well, and then you've got like Toppin plays well or Mathurin plays well, and then sometimes neither of them play well, and Neesmith plays well. So it's like sometimes you just see one of these guys get stuck in the lineup where they can't seem to get the ball or score. What are your thoughts on it, Daryl, overall heading into this season? Because I think this is a huge chance for Mathurin to take that next step, like myself and a lot of people want to see him do.
I think it's a good opportunity for sure for both players, right? Especially Mathurin coming off, last season he was hurt in the playoffs and didn't play. So this season he had an opportunity to get a taste of it, right? And I think he enjoyed that. One of the things to Alex's point, though, when Ben doesn't play as well off of Tyrese because of that speed and that pace, right? So you got to try and figure that out. But I would say this: you can't have enough good players. You can't have enough good because if someone goes down, take a look at what happened in Game 7, right? So I wanna go backwards a little bit. We've been talking about how this injury for Tyrese is devastating to the Pacers, and oh wow, this is gonna be bad for them. All season long, all we talked about was how deep they were, how together they were, and what strong of a team they were, team collectively. And a lot of people try to compare this to the Paul George snapping his leg. The Pacers at that time were a team coming downhill. They had peaked in the Miami series in 2013-14. That's when they had peaked. They were not the team that this Pacers current team is because they didn't have the depth of players that could make it happen. That was a Paul George led team, and they went as Paul George did. My belief is that the Pacers are going to, the Tyrese loss is going to hurt without a doubt. However, I think they've got enough talent to absorb that type of a loss versus what the Pacers did in 2015-16. See, that summer when he was in the Olympics. So what I believe is that Ben is going to play better because he has to. Mm-hmm. It's contract time, right? And then also, too, I believe that Nemhard has to get off the ball a little bit, right? Because to your point, 30% from three from a guy that's that good can't be that, right? Either A, he's got to take some of this, his defensive prowess, take a step back there, or get off the ball a little bit more, one or the other, because he's a better shooter than 30% three-point shooter, and also he's a smart player. Nembhard's smart. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. So oftentimes guys will say, well, man, he's not even talking. Yeah, he's talking, but he's not letting you see him talking. He's under control. So my take is I think the Pacers are going to have a worse season than last year, yes. However, it's going to surprise a lot of people how well they play coming together as collectively as a team, and adding Jay Huff based off of the highlights. Because I'm not going to lie, never seen him play live. I know went to Virginia, so he's a smart guy, right? He looks athletic, so give him a chance. And then you got that flip is Isaiah Jackson. Isaiah Jackson came up and played well every year, step after step, after his rookie year. So it was tough seeing him tear his Achilles early on in the season as well. So him coming back, I know he's not under contract, but I would anticipate it'll be a team and player friendly deal. And I hope he does come back because the guy, he's committed to getting better each and every year, especially at the free throw line.
I'll let you go kind of respond to what Daryl was saying.
No, I think Daryl brought up a great point talking about two things that I probably should have brought up, and I'm glad you brought them up. Number one, it is a team-friendly – not a team-friendly. It's a contract year for Bennedict Mathurin, right? And that definitely plays a difference. I mean, Miles Turner was in a contract year last year, and he shot 40% from three, the best he's ever shot. So I think when guys know payday's coming, and they know opportunity's coming, they're going to play their best. They're going to be on their best behavior. And what an opportunity for Mathurin as well with Halliburton not being there. And you talk about how deep this team is, and I think that's a great point as well. I mean, how many times last year did you pull up social media and you see fans just getting so upset that Jarace Walker's not in the rotation or not getting minutes? And it's just like there's guys like that deserve playing time because, I mean, Jarace Walker's really good. And I think Jarace Walker probably would have played against the Thunder more than obviously he didn't play because of the ankle injury that he suffered in game 6 against the Knicks. But had he not injured himself really badly there trying to contest a cat block or a layup, I think he would have played. So yeah. I think that with him having an opportunity to get there some more minutes at the three and the backup role, that's going to be huge for him because he's a guy that can pass the ball, shoot the ball well, play good defense. Definitely a great year of growth for him. And I even think a guy like Johnny Furphy could get some minutes next year as well. I don't know how many minutes he'll get, but I think Carlisle is definitely going to try to give him more of an opportunity. I mean, you're talking about a 6'9" forward that can shoot the ball incredibly well, and he's just got a nose for the basketball. Every time I watch Johnny Furphy play, he's going out there getting rebounds and just playing fundamental basketball. It's not like he's over there trying to be a one-on-one scorer. He's a very good team player. And so, yeah, I think with Mathurin, though, I want to make sure that I'm not discrediting Mathurin either as a player because the thing in Game 7, they needed him to get to the basket because they were just so broken offensively. And he is one of the only guys on the roster that can actually do that, put his head down and get to the basket. And it's as much as you want to play a certain style, you do need a little bit of a zag to what you're normally doing. So it's nice to have this fast-paced thing, moving, shooting the basketball. But if your shots aren't falling, you need someone to get into the teeth of the defense. And I felt like last year, in the playoff run, there were so many times that he was kind of on a short leash. And it was like if he was struggling defensively, they'd pull him out. He was really bad at some points against the Knicks, and other times like he was terrific against the Knicks. And so you just never really saw like consistent level from him in terms of what I think Carlisle wanted. And so this year, I think he's going to have more of an opportunity to get that consistent role because when Smith and Nemhard were both down with injury, like they had to play a completely different style of play. And Mathurin played better in that, but he also kind of like accepted a different role. I think now they're going to need him to be more of a scorer, and I think he's going to be better at that. But I do think the playoff experience helped him. Like, just look at the Thunder series, like that game 3, 27 points in 22 minutes off the bench. He's a 10th guy in the game for the Pacers. Like, that's pretty good when that's your 10th guy coming into the game. But at the same time, he's kind of got a little Lance Stevenson to him, right? Where, you want to kind of control him a little bit more, but he's not as crazy as Lance. Don't get me wrong. But he don't have the handles like Lance either, or the passing like Lance. But
Alex, I was going to ask you a question about Ben, right? So talking about his head being in the game, I've seen him play, the last 3 seasons. It seems like he's not as bad as Miles was. When things would go bad for Miles, he'd drop his head. And I talked to these guys about it on the pod. It wasn't as that bad, but it seemed as though there were times in games where he would just lose himself for a while, right? And then the good thing for him though was he was able to bring himself back from time to time. Did you see that? And what were your thoughts on that?
No, it's a good point of view. And honestly, for me with Mathurin, I think he was trying to overthink everything because his rookie season, like come off the bench, be a scorer, get buckets. And like, that's what he did. Like that first 2 months of his rookie season, everybody was talking about him like being the rookie of the year. Like he was in that category. And then Carlisle was like, you know what? Yeah, you can score, but it's more than scoring. I need you to pass. I need you to play defense. I need you to navigate screens. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And he's still like he's a better on-ball defender than he is an off-ball defender. If you watch him play off-ball defense, he gets lost.
He loses it.
Yeah, he'll sit there and he'll watch the ball and not pay attention to his man, and then be a step behind his man when his man goes to cut or crash the glass, things like that. On ball defense, he does a pretty good job, but like if he gets caught up in a screen, he wants to switch immediately and doesn't want to fight through the screen like you'll see Nembhard and Nesmith do. Even Ben Shepherd's better at that than Mathurin. He just wants to switch easily, and it's like you can't just switch and put Miles on Jalen Brunson. Like that's just not a good switch. You need to fight through that or hedge and recover and figure out how to get back to pick up your spot defensively. And people get frustrated when you bring that up because they're not really seeing that part of his game. But like offensively, like, yeah, I think he knows like when he takes a bad shot, not to look at the bench because Carlisle is going to rip him a new one. But he's done a much, much better job of not allowing things to bother him. And I think that's a great point because I think there was a few different times where you kind of just tell like he was going through the motions. Like, what do you want from me? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm trying to pass, but like when I drive and the lane gets clogged, I kick it out, but like I'm just not. I don't see the floor the same way as a Tyrese or even a Nemhard because those guys are just looking to pass. I mean, that's kind of like in their nature where he's just looking at the basket, and he's so gifted at that. I've said several times on the podcast, quit trying to make him something that he's not. Yes, you want him to improve as a passer, that kind of thing. But at the same time, this man is a gifted scorer. Allow him to be a scorer more than trying to force him to play the style you want to play. Because I just feel like when you do that, you're taking away what he does best. And that's shooting off the dribble and getting into the teeth of the defense and getting them in foul trouble and things like that. Because nobody can get to the free throw line like him. So I think you kind of just like got to play to his strengths a little bit more and instead of trying to like, kind of bend him into how you want him to play.
No, I would agree. I think Mathurin, and I think you said it right, he's been on a short leash, but he's a go-getter. Like, he can get to the bucket, and I think there's a lot of people, especially in my family, that are like, what is he doing? And I'm like, when you, like you said, when this team plays a certain way, it's like Mathurin most out of the time in this offense, he gets caught and gets just stuck in the middle, basically. There's not much he can do, because when you have all these guys that can score and play well in this system, and he's the one guy that does different from everybody else, and that's get to the bucket, he's gonna look like the worst guy on the floor, in air quotes, most of the time. Ramon, I want to give you a chance to speak on not only Nemhard but Mathurin as well, since you got the chance to fix the audio a little bit. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if it's fixed or
not. It's not.
Do you have a mic plugged in? I would just unplug your mic and use your computer mic.
I'm using the computer mic right now.
There you go. There we go. Now it's better. There we go.
Okay. So I've been coaching high school football and basketball for 18 years. I look at I look at Ben, and he's the type of player that I have to be the best coach I can be for him to reach his potential, because he's got some things that's going to drive you crazy and that you're going to cheer for. And it may not get corrected at this time and stage of his life. I'm not sure. Could or it couldn't. So I have to be much better than what I am so he can be as good as he can be. He's a guy that's he's gonna do some things that's gonna make you mad. He's gonna do some things that you have to put him to the side, put him on the bench, but get him right back in there. All right. And so if you're not that type of guy or that type of coach, he may not be your type of guy in the long haul, because he's gonna do what he does. He can score it. He can flat out score it. But if you haven't built your team to take advantage of a person who's one dimensional, basically all I can do is score it, he may not be the greatest fit in the long run. He may be a great Band-Aid right now, but he may not be a great fit in the long run. I know I'm not a Pacer fan, but I live here, so I want him to win. And so I watch him play, and I curse at him all the time. I'm screaming at the TV like, that was stupid. What are you doing? But then I have to think, this is what he does. Good or bad, everyone said he's a go-getter. He go gets buckets. And what happens when people go get buckets, you get mistakes. You get missed passes. You get breaking the offense when you're a go-getter like that. There's several great players that are like that. I think one of his problems his problem may be, you better become a better go-getter. You better be able to score at a much higher clip if that's how you're going to play, if that's going to be your signature. You better become really, really skilled at it. Because right now, I think that he's teetering with being skilled as a scorer, but I don't think he's one of those elite scorers. So now you get frustrated when he do certain things.
Yeah, and I think this is his chance to especially this season, to make that mark. And Alex, I think you made a great point at the deadline. That's going to be really the case right there, where it's like Pritchard and everybody in that office will say, all right, do we trade him or do we pay him at this point? Because I think if they would have paid Turner, I feel like maybe Mathurin would have got moved this offseason if they would have paid Turner. But now it's like, now the door opens of, do we pay Mathurin this money, or do we not think he is worth this money? Because at the end of the day, I think you'll look at this when we get to the deadline, you'll look at that amount he's played this year, but then you can't disregard the last couple of years as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting offseason.